There was more than one disappearing act that took place in the Hargis trials. The next duo to disappear was Deputy Clerk E.L. Noble and Sheriff Jesse Spicer. As we have discussed, they were both agents for the United States Land Syndicate. These men were not lured away from their trials by being paid to run. It is supposed that they were involved in the imaginary land for sale scam and helped dupe many people out of their hard-earned money. And when this scandal was exposed, they got out of town quick. Or did they? Also, a little note. We have found in several places where Jesse Spicer is called a sheriff and a deputy sheriff. From everything that we have discovered so far, he was actually a deputy sheriff who worked under Sheriff Edward Callahan. We felt that we need to cover this because you will see Spicer referred to as both, depending upon the newspaper. Come along with us as we discuss the accusation of fraud and how it quickly turns into the accusation for 3 murders in Breathitt County. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger time machine to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. How Spicer and Noble got overlooked. Let's take a step back and look at the turmoil that was going on in Breathitt County at that time. There were several criminal trials going on at the same time in several counties over the same murders. Then there was a huge civil case that was being fought in Clark County. But up to this point, even though the names of Noble and Spicer came up a couple of times in these court proceedings, they were nowhere to be found, and they did not send an affidavit for their testimony. So, where were they? We were not the only ones to ask this very question, according to the article that appears in the Mount Sterling Advocate, dated December 30th, 1903. Quote, Lish Noble returns. Jackson was treated to a sensation last week by the sudden arrival of former Deputy Clerk E.L. Noble, who left there a few days after Markham assassination in the company of Deputy Sheriff Jesse Spicer. The mysterious disappearance of these 2 young men, following upon the arrest of Curtis Jett, gave rise to the report that they were in some way connected with the Markham murder. But it soon developed that they were alleged to be implicated in a land scheme operated by Chicago sharpers under the name of the United States Land Syndicate. And upon being notified of the plot of their Chicago associates, they disappeared. Noble was said to have been an eyewitness to the killing of Markham, and Jett filed a lengthy affidavit for continuance on account of Noble's absence, alleging that Noble would state that Jett was on the sidewalk at the time Markham was shot, unquote. So it appears that both men went on the run immediately after the murder of Markham. But why? Did it have to do with Markham's murder, or was it something else? Both men were heavily implicated in the land fraud scheme that got busted in Chicago. As we have previously stated, the United States Land Syndicate had 2 men arrested for fraud and were facing federal charges. So it would stand to reason while all this was going down in Washington, D.C., that Noble and Spicer would not want to be found and face potential charges of fraud on their own. Spicer's mysterious train ride. But just a year later, we find something curious. While the newspaper did not state why Jesse Spicer had to go to Frankfort, it is very interesting that he was in the company of a sheriff, a judge, and several prisoners. Was he being charged with fraud or possibly the murders at this point? And what business did he have in Frankfort? According to the article that appears in the Breathitt County News, dated April 29, 1904, quote, Sheriff James P. Sizemore in company of County Judge William Robinson and Jesse Spicer left on the L&A train on Wednesday morning for Frankfort with the following prisoners sentenced to the penitentiary, unquote. You would think that he would travel on his own accord without the company of these people if he was a free person. Also, if he was working in an official capacity as deputy sheriff, the newspapers would state that fact. But instead, we see him listed as only Jesse Spicer. So, this just adds to the mystery of what he was doing in Frankfort, Kentucky. The bigger picture. The newspaper articles about Jesse Spicer skips ahead about 3 years. We get more of a complete picture of when Spicer skipped town. We also see that he did not leave without having funds. The article also gives more of a complete picture of what Spicer's role was in the scam. According to the article that appears in the Breathitt County News dated May 31st, 1907, quote, Eagle Eye of the Law. Overlooked Jesse Spicer, accused of murder. Big Pistol, Jesse Spicer, is probably the only man in the United States under indictment for 3 murders, for whom no reward has ever been offered, and who is a fugitive from justice, with no one looking for him. When the United States militia, under the orders of the governor, swept down on Jackson in Breathitt County and stopped a series of assassinations, Jesse Spicer quickly packed his trunk and slipped away. In the excitement, he was not missed. It is charged that he carried away with him many thousands of dollars. Detectives employed by Northern Investors report that for several years, Spicer was the leader of a band of men who had been receiving money from all parts of the United States, advertising extensively and selling claims to Breathitt and Perry County timberland, to which they gave titles. The deeds were executed and recorded, but the described property was afterward reported fictitious. Spicer had been closely connected with the Hargises during the reign of assassination. He has been indicted in both Breathitt and Fayette counties for the murders of Dr. Cox, James Cockrell, and James B. Markham. When last heard of, Spicer was in San Francisco, and it is said that he perished in the earthquake which destroyed the city last year. Unquote. Okay, we will find out during the trials that took place as late as 1909 that Spicer did not die in the San Francisco earthquake. He will face trial alongside of the Hargises and others. However, we will state that we could not find any historical records concerning Jesse Spicer or what happened to him after those events. Also, according to this article, we now have a connection between the feuds going on in Perry and Breathitt counties. It seems that B.F. French was not the only connection between the two. But we do find it odd that the murders of Cockrell and Cox would be tried in Fayette County, as the men did not die, nor was the crime of murder committed in that county. Questions we are asking in the upcoming trial. This actually leaves us with more questions than answers. Why would Spicer and Noble wait until after the murder of Markham to leave town if the whole land scandal was exposed a couple of months before that point? After all, James Markham would die on May 4th, 1903, and the United States Land Syndicate scandal would hit the newspapers on March 27th, 1903. So, why wait if the men thought that they could be arrested at any time by federal agents? Conversely, why leave if Markham was the reason that the men thought that they would be caught? Did Spicer and Noble direct the Hargis and French factions about how to handle those that opposed what they were doing? How in the world would someone that was accused of land and mail fraud be connected to a string of murders in Breathitt County? And why not also in Perry County? And furthermore, why would Spicer be indicted for the murders and yet he would not be arrested or even hunted down to face the charges? Were Spicer and Noble the actual linchpins that connected everyone together and gave the reason behind the murders? Were these murders committed because Cox, Cockrell, and Markham came close to exposing the scandal in Breathitt and Perry counties that would implicate the Hargises and French factions? And if so, how many of the murders in Perry County were actually connected to this scandal? When the news about the United States Land Syndicate hit the newspapers, was this the connection that Markham needed to piece everything together that was going on in both counties? Was this the reason behind Markham going to the courthouse to file paperwork concerning the deeds, and also the reason why there were several lawsuits that Markham would be part of that implicated Sheriff Callahan? Could this have been what was written in the newspapers about Kentucky State Senator Alex Hargis, and he wanted a public apology because it implicated him in this scandal? Will any of these questions finally be answered in the trial, or will they be covered up? And why, before now, wasn't any of this handed down to future generations about what was really going on during this time? Why the cover-up for 100 years? In next week's video, we will begin the main Hargis criminal trial. Settle in, because there will be a lot of new confessions and testimonies that have not been heard before, as well as there will be 7 men charged with the murders of Cockrell, Cox, and Markham, including Jesse Spicer. Will these men be finally found guilty and go to prison, or will all 7 men finally be set free and found innocent? We will let you decide as our 13th juror if the verdict was a just one. Thank you. We at Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the Appalachian feuds. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.